Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Marketing Careers Uncovered. So, I'm here for my second episode, joined by Alice Rowan, who is a freelance website copy and SEO content writer. I was racking my brains for a bit, just thinking how best to introduce Alice. And actually, I found probably the best and easiest way in which I could do that is just reading out the first few lines of her LinkedIn profile, which states no bullshit, no jargon, clear website copy, an SEO content writer, professional content detangler, and search engine wrangler. So yeah, I definitely couldn't have done better myself. Thanks for joining us, Alice.
Thank you very much for having me.
So as we often do with these chats, it'd be really good for you just to give us a little bit of an overview of what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure thing. So as you already said, I am a freelancer. I am self-employed. It took me a long journey to get here, and I'm sure we'll get into that soon. Loving the self-employed life. I primarily write website copy, but I also dig into my clients' websites and check their SEO. The amount of times people get in their own way purely because there's a whole bunch of stuff that no one ever told them existed that they don't know that they need. So a big part of my job is digging into their CMS and creating content for them and stuff that ticks all the boxes that search engines like, and then writing website copy and basically just fixing things, making sure that their businesses are clearly presented, people know what they need, they stand out, they don't sound like everyone else, and also that Google can actually see them and help them be seen by other people.
Brilliant. And what type of clients do you typically work with? Is it a particular size, sector?
Honestly, it's a huge range. My personal favorites are independent creatives and like small to medium businesses. So I've worked with everyone from, like, one of my current clients is an illustrator. He creates custom fonts and does illustration for like book covers and packaging and stuff. But then I've also worked for a big IT services and consultancy firm in London. I wrote their website. So it's all over the shop in terms of sector.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
quite it's
like
quite a
to,
range, isn't it? Really.
yeah, it is. I personally really like to work with either one person or where I'm working directly with the CEO or like the one marketing person in house. Um, Part of, and again, we'll get into this later. I love working one on one with people and I love communicating one on one with people. What I don't love is when you suddenly have 50,000 people involved in the review process. There's really long onboarding processes and it gets very bogged down and my work gets lost.
I don't think anyone particularly enjoys those kind of projects. I mean, unless you're a complete sadist, really, they're often quite
Yeah,
quite
like
challenging pieces of work, aren't they?
I dipped my toe into the kind of more enterprise world and it bit me in the arse. So I don't want to do that anymore.
Well, joy of a freelance life. You don't have to. You can say no.
Yeah, I just also feel like I can make a much bigger difference to a small business than I can to a large company. To a large company, I am just a disposable asset. To a small business or an independent business owner, I am not only creating work for them, but potentially like teaching them fundamental skills that they need to develop their business. And that's just so much more meaningful to me.
If I sort of parachuted back in time and met a far younger Alice, is this something you always had had a sort of inkling of doing, or did you just sort of fall into this as a career?
So, okay, I'm going to tell you a story, and it's a story that has served me very well across job interviews in my life. And a number of people have accused me of it being absolute bullshit, and I promise you it's not. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I used to have innocent smoothies, the mango one, obviously, superior flavour, in my lunch boxes at school. And I was absolutely fascinated by, they would have like little stories and little games and stuff on the back of the cartons, which I loved. And I think I went home one day and I asked my mum, I was like, how does that get there? Like, why are there stories? And she was like, oh, that's someone's job. And that kind of set something in my head of like, when I'm older, I want to be someone who writes cool stuff. It wasn't any deeper than that. I was like a 7 or 8 year old.
You're
Then for
right. That totally
years,
does sound made up.
It sounds like bullshit, doesn't it? But I've always been obsessed
But
with
I'll believe you.
drinks.
I'll believe you.
I have a fascination with advert straplines as well. Like there was an advert. I don't know how old I was when this happened. Maybe 10. And it was an American Express advert, and it was animated, and it was narrated by David Tennant. And I just remember the strapline was "Impossible. It's 2 letters too long," and it stuck with me. And it's always been little things like that. And I've always like billboards, the Oasis campaigns. It's a wonder I never went into ad copy. But that's just the most visible and the most obvious. So I've always been fascinated by it. And then for years, I was like, oh, I'll be an English teacher. Because I've always told I should be a teacher. I should either be someone who runs a company, or I should be a teacher. Kind of realized not too long into starting to pursue that I'm not good in front of big groups of people. Doing things like Brighton SEO, where I talk for 20 minutes in front of a room of 700 people, is fine, but like showing up all day every day in a big room of people is a bit too much for me. That's a really roundabout way of saying I probably was always destined to end up here. I nearly became a teacher, and then I didn't.
Because you studied creative writing, didn't you? So
Twice, actually.
Twice.
So I did English language, like linguistics, and creative writing as my undergrad, with the full intention of it being I'll drop the creative writing after the first year. It's just a nice little hobby, and I'll stick with the linguistics, and I'll become an English teacher. And then I kind of fell in love with the creative writing. My lecturers were amazing. The class was amazing. It was just truly changed my life, those 3 years. So much so that I took a year out, and then I went back and did it all over again. And I got a master's degree in creative and critical writing, where I focused a lot on how social media has impacted the way that we tell stories.
That's really cool. So how did you go about that?
It started out project-wise as I was going to write a series of short stories that were all like social media was an integral part of that. And then as I was researching, and I mean, I read dozens upon dozens of books about social media, about surveillance capitalism, the way that Silicon Valley works. I read some short stories and some books about it. But this was in like 2017, 2018, I was doing this research. So social media wasn't as prevalent in other forms of media as it is now. And I was doing all the research, and I was like, you know what, actually, I think I'm more interested in the way that this is impacting narratives and identity and storytelling structure outside of this is a book about Instagram kind of thing. So I looked at for example, the evolution of, I've completely forgotten the technical term for it now, and I'm kicking myself, but books that are made up of like a series of letters, and that's evolved into, there are now books that are made up of text messages, tweets, and all sorts of things like that. That was one aspect of it. Also the growing popularity of really short narrative structures. So if you look at Matt Haig's books, they're incredibly popular, and a huge part of that is that sometimes a chapter is a paragraph. Sometimes a chapter is 3 pages, and it's all broken up into really small chunks.
So that's quite forward thinking, really. So yeah, if I sort of cast my mind back to that 2016, 2017, I think I'd had a Facebook account for not very long. LinkedIn was just floundering around a bit as a sort of online CV, but wasn't really, we might have been trading pictures and a few, oh look, I'm eating a bagel at this nice new cafe, but certainly not to the extent of that telling of stories like we see just littered across the whole internet now.
So it was really great, and I really wish that I would have written a book based on my dissertation, because now what I wrote about then seems obvious now, but it wasn't at the time. It was a field of study that was relatively new.
But I guess all the time while you're looking at all these bits and pieces, there's always the innocent smoothie bottle sort of calling out to you, pulling you into that.
Yeah. And the
Pulling you
thing
into
is,
that world.
while I was writing this, I was working at an agency still. I was like managing Instagram accounts and running Facebook ads and stuff. And I honestly, it felt really insidious. I was learning about the inner workings of all of these companies and how, frankly, fucked up it all is. And the data collection and the Cambridge Analytica scandal and all of that stuff. And I was like running, I suppose, what would now be Meta ads, but at the time was Facebook ads campaigns for luxury hospitality clients. And like, it felt so weird. It was actually after I wrote that dissertation. And this is something that I said to all of my employers, and it's something I stick to as a freelancer as well, is I don't touch ad copy. I don't write ads. I'm not interested in programming ads. I won't do it because surveillance capitalism scares the shit out of me and I don't want to participate.
Yeah, and yeah, again, one of those joys of being a freelancer is, you can set your own boundaries and say, well, actually, this is what I will do and this is what I'm not.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess the first place I'd really like to start is your first marketing role and your first real step into that workplace environment. What was that like?
So this actually started while I was at uni for my undergraduate. A local agency reached out to the course leader and was like, hey, you have writers, yeah, we need interns. And I think 5 or 6 of us interviewed. Me and one other girl got it. She got fired after 2 days. It was a whole thing. And then it was just me. I was an unpaid copywriting intern and working in the luxury hospitality industry. And it was interesting. They then offered me paid work ongoing because I was also working at Waitrose at the time and working 6 days a week and trying to study a degree was a bit much. So they were like, we really like you. It's been a few months. Come and join us. And then instead of giving me a salary, they gave me basically minimum hourly wage, which is a whole other thing we can talk about. It barely raised above minimum wage the entire 4 years that I was there. But yeah, so it was interesting. My first ever client was a carpet company owned by the best friend or one of the best friends of the guy who ran the agency that I worked at. But beyond Carpet Giant, and I will say now, Carpet Giant, the dude who runs it is really lovely and really easy to work with. So it was a bit of a boring topic, but the client was really nice. So it was a good entryway, I think. Because then when I got to start working on like the hotel websites and writing ad copy for spa retreats and stuff, it was really, really exciting. And I was like, oh, this is so creative and so fancy.
Was there much of a learning curve there from that, being parachuted into there?
Yeah. Steep. It was a steep learning curve because I think 2 or 3 months. Now, one thing I will say for that agency is they are renowned around the local area for loving a wave of redundancies. The staff turnover there was horrendous. I survived 7 rounds of redundancies in 3 or 4 years. The first round of redundancies happened 2 months after I'd been given a part-time job there. I was a junior copywriter, and the only other copywriter in the whole company was my boss, and she got made redundant. So at that point, I am a junior who barely knows what they're doing, and I am the only copywriter in the entire agency. The learning curve was steep. It was very, very steep.
I love a challenge. Really unsettling.
Oh, everything about that job was unsettling, but I survived it for 4 years. So
what kept you hanging in there? 'Cause, I know plenty of people who would just go, do you know what? Forget this.
I mean, I was 20 when I took that job. I didn't know any better. I assumed that all office jobs were that cutthroat and ruthless and brutal and abusive, to be quite honest. But aside from the awful people who ran that company, everyone on the ground was amazing. It's one of those things like the worse the working environment, the better your co-workers. We were such a close-knit group of people because we were fighting against so much shit all of the time. And also, I was learning so much. I was incredibly intellectually and creatively fulfilled at that agency. And had it not been run like a total shit show, I would probably still be there. Like, I loved all of the creative work. That agency is the reason that the second I went freelance, I flocked back to writing websites. Websites are my first love in marketing. And I was at the point where I was pumping out a website a week at that agency, which I will say I don't do that anymore. I don't write a website in a week. I take my time. I do my research. And but don't get me wrong, I do some of my best creative work under pressure, but not when I'm at constant burnout. There were two extreme opposing things going on at that agency. On one side, you had the bullying and the burnout, the exhaustion, the really toxic environment. But on the other hand, you had incredible people, really fun projects, amazing creative output. And like the designers that I was working with were exceptional as well, and they were bringing out the best in me as a writer. It's very bittersweet thinking back on my agency days. Like, I wouldn't be where I am now without it.
No, and I've certainly done some work agency side myself over the years, and I've always found that it can be a little bit of a pressure cooker type environment, but I think owing to that speed and pace and being exposed to, you talk about things like design as well, and how that can influence the work you do. So whilst you're honing those writing skills, actually it's operating in a much broader world, isn't it?
Yeah, I tell you what, my favorite thing about working in an agency, right, is you are surrounded by people. You are in a room of like 40, 50 people, and everyone's purpose is marketing. Everyone's job is marketing. Everyone gets it. Everyone is invested. Everyone cares. So that was incredible, and I will never forget that, and I still miss it. When I say about the toxic environment, I do want to make it really clear that I have spoken to a number of people who have worked at loads of different agencies about my experience at that specific agency, and all of their reactions have been like, what the actual fuck? So from what I hear, my agency experience was not a normal agency experience. It was pretty wild. But yeah, it was creatively, it was incredible. And I think freelancing has allowed me to get the agency feel back, in terms of I work on a big variety of projects. I have lots of different clients. I work in loads of different industries, but without all of the elements that caused me to crash and burn so badly.
So where did you, wrapping up at the agency, where did you head to next?
I went from working in this B2C agency of like 40 to 50 people specializing in luxury hospitality to being one of 3 people in a marketing team at a HR tech company.
That's different.
Just a bit. It took me, I would say, well over 6 months to adjust to everything from being trusted by my manager and having basic autonomy over my working hours. Also, I will say as well, to the credit of this company, this was back in 2018, so this was halfway through my master's degree, or 2017, somewhere around there. And they were already doing hybrid working. So this is pre-pandemic. I worked in the office 2 days, worked from home 2 days, did uni 1 day. Which I actually found was a really good balance. I loved that. And yeah, industry-wise, workload-wise, dynamics-wise, completely different. I went from 4 years of working in a really buzzy office with loud music and full of creative people to being shunned into a corner with me, the digital marketing chap, and our designer kind of just being ignored by the rest of the company and shouted at by sales for not giving them enough leads.
So all of a sudden you're having to justify marketing's existence within a larger structure, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Which was another steep learning curve, and one that I did actually really enjoy. I got to put a lot of new processes in place while I was there, which I was really grateful for. And also, I said the biggest skill that I learned while I was there was HubSpot CRM management, because we had a CRM of like 80, 90,000 people. I had never done anything on that scale before. And so I learned how to do like email automation and segmenting and like really, really specific campaigns. So there was, I think the most important thing, and I think a huge part of the reason why people job hop so much nowadays, is the more often you move, the more you can learn. And I took completely different fundamental skill sets out of every job I worked at.
What would you say was your biggest challenge?
Okay, so a consistent theme throughout all of my jobs, except for one. I'll get onto why in a minute. And I think a lot of this stems from my, at that point, unrealized neurodivergence. I had no idea that I was autistic and that I've got ADHD. Look back on it, all makes sense now. I have never really struggled to pick up technical skills, design skills, marketing skills, like the how. Always been very good at the how, and I can pick things up very, very quickly. It's the people side of things that was a very, very steep learning curve, because every single job you go into, every business you work in, every office you walk into, there is a different unspoken social hierarchy, and like no one lays out to you what that is. You just have to figure it out, and it doesn't make any sense to me. A huge thing for me, I think, moving to that first in-house B2B job was feeling like personally attacked by the fact that no one gave a shit about marketing, and having to learn that it's not personal. It's not personal. It's not a reflection on the work that I'm doing. It's that they just have never been educated on it, and then finding a way to educate people without being seen as an unreasonable woman, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah, I remember, looking at it kind of the other side is when I was first exposed to, the world of corporate finance, and someone from finance talking me through, how they constructed budgets and P&L stuff. Yes, as far as I was concerned at that point, it was bloody magic, but it's the same. Yeah, but I think we do forget sometimes that as marketers, actually, not everyone gets it, understands it really, and it's as far as I'm concerned, again, it's like witchcraft really. It's a black box.
I remember having a conversation with the CEO. I think I'd literally been at the company for like maybe a month, and by that point I was like, I'd gone from this really creative environment to somewhere that was quite static, and it became a much more technical marketing job. Like I said, a lot of it was about CRM management and personalizing things. It's where I learned a lot of SEO stuff as well. But I was so desperate to get back into the creative stuff that I spoke to the CEO, and I was like, we need a new website. Our website is failing us. There's like 7 H1s on the homepage. What are we doing? Also, branding. Like, we don't have branding. And his response was, we have branding. You can see our logo. Like my soul left my body at that point. And I was like, okay, this is never going to be a creative job. And so I just set about learning the more technical side of things. First time I'd ever encountered or even heard of SEMrush was at that job, which seems like a ridiculous thing to say now as an SEO content writer. But yeah, and then also CRM management, database management. I spent so much time in emails doing email marketing and events as well, because events was where most of the marketing budget went for that particular company. They exhibited at the Learning Technologies every year. And so like 3 to 6 months of my year was revolving around that one show.
But even just listening to that, you rattled off about, so 4 or 5 different areas that you typically wouldn't be exposed to. If you were part of a much larger team, you might have focused on a particular area in your corner, but there's loads there to go at, isn't there?
This is also a big part of the reason why I like working with small marketing teams, because I get it. I have been like that marketing team. Both of those people left, and for a while I was standalone. I was a one-person marketing team there, and then they brought someone else on, and then the pandemic happened and I got made redundant, yada yada yada. So I have done the whole I'm the only content person in this entire company. I've done the whole I am the only marketing person in this entire company. And it's really important to me that my clients feel seen and feel heard, not by someone who can just go, oh, I understand academically what this is like, but by someone who has the lived experience.
Yeah, what you've got as well is you got 2 quite powerful things coming together here. You've got that whole real boots on the ground experience, but then the benefit of a highly creative agency experience. Whack the two together, and you've got something really, really powerful to work with.
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, I certainly, that's how I see it. It can be really difficult to communicate that to other people, because I'm in this really awkward space where on one end I get people who see my experience, who meet me, who understand how much I care about all of this and how well I understand all the pieces that fit together. And their attitude is very much like, we'll pay whatever you need to charge us. We trust you. You're the expert. Favorite type of clients, obviously. And then you have on the other side, and I do still love to work with independent business owners, but people who have to be so careful with budget and they want to understand everything that goes into what I'm doing, but they don't understand because they don't have the experience in marketing, and then it's really difficult to communicate the direct value. A lot of people want to see marketing as an ROI kind of exercise, but I can't sit here and tell you that streamlining the sitemap of your website and improving your UX through your copywriting is going to increase your sales by 237%. Like, it doesn't work like that. I can't be that specific.
No, so, there's a longer term sort of compounding effect with all of these things as well.
It's also like trust building and stuff. Like, even with the work that I do, let alone with bigger companies, if people are going to invest 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 grand in a website, a lot of people will take the time to save up for that because they want to get it done by the right people. And I've had people approach me who have been like, I've wanted to work with you for a year. I'm still saving up money. I'll probably be ready in about 6 months, but I do want to work with you. And so even as a one-person business, sometimes my lead time is 18 months. But it's really important that you keep building your reputation and showcasing your brand to the best of its ability. And all of that, all roads point back to your website, right? It's a huge part of why I love websites so much. All roads point back to that one place. And so even if your website doesn't have the best rankings in the world, if it's not number 1 on Google, all of your marketing channels still point back to your website, and your website needs to be the absolute epitome of all of the joy and logic and wonder that your business and your services have to offer, regardless of what you're offering and who you're offering it to.
What I kind of want to go back to here is, we're talking about, you were you're now in a really, really small, you're a very, very small marketing team in the midst of a large company. There's all
Yes.
this opportunity for development,
Mhm.
but how are you going about that? Are there other colleagues in other teams that you're sort of pulling on and learning from? Are you spending time with sales? So, yeah, very, very rarely does development happen by osmosis.
Yeah, not for lack of trying. That was a tricky one. So I really wanted to get more embedded in the sales team, and I started going to the sales meetings as the marketing rep, um, and being like, "Hey, this is what we're up to. This is the information I need from you. Can I sit in on demo calls?" All of the sort of stuff that I tell new marketers going into their first B2B jobs to do.
Yeah,
Right? Is
not enough people do that as far as I see it.
you cannot understand how your customers are communicating until you sit in on sales demo calls. You also need to make sure that marketing and sales is one cohesive experience. So you need to understand how the sales reps are communicating your products and your services to your customers, because like otherwise you can do all the best marketing in the world. If someone but like buys into your marketing, gets through to sales, and they're being sold a completely different thing, they're not going to convert. And that's just a right hand not talking to left hand issue.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's madness when you stop and think about it, but there
mhm.
are more times often than not when I've experienced and seen marketing versus sales or sales versus marketing, and
Yeah,
it's tragic.
I've definitely experienced that, and it hurts. I hate it. In that particular company, there was a really big expectation that marketing works for sales. No, that's fucking bullshit. Marketing doesn't work for sales. They have to work together. And I might be biased here, but I actually think that sales should be an extension of marketing, because the way that B2B business works has changed. 10, 20, 30 years ago, it was a case of marketing was there to support sales and create sales enablement materials, help them to create presentations. Obviously, there'll be the advertising and stuff, but a huge part of marketing's job was to literally hold sales's hand and go, here is everything you could possibly need. But now people want to, especially when even like big purchases. There was a report recently from McKinsey and Co. I was watching some content on TikTok from an incredible woman called B2B Jade. I highly recommend you look her up. And she was talking about a McKinsey and Co. report, and it was something like I can't remember the specific statistic, but like the majority of business owners are willing to spend tens of thousands of pounds having never spoken to a sales representative. And people nowadays want more and more self-service. They want things to be clearer. They want things to be more obvious. They want more information, like as much information as possible, without having to deal with sales reps. So now marketing does the majority of the legwork, and sales closes the opportunity.
Yeah, and it's a huge opportunity as well for actually, well paid sales professionals to go after higher value opportunities, manage key accounts and not be scrambling around running after yeah small
Yeah.
opportunities here and
Personally, I
there.
think there needs to be a fundamental change in the sales commission based model, because it encourages bad work practices. But that is a whole other thing. That's one of the big things I learned working in B2B, was how much that messes things up, is because people don't talk to each other and departments don't talk to each other. I spent so much time acting as like an impromptu project manager when I was agency side, because to me, connecting all of the pieces together, no matter what I'm working on, is really, really important, which is why like I learned how to edit, crop, retouch photos. I learned how to do HTML and CSS coding. I learned how to do SEO stuff. I learned how to do all sorts of things, so that if I needed a quick job doing, I could just do it myself, and so that I understood everything enough that I could wrangle projects together. And that's just a huge part of my personality and how my brain works, that's carried through every single one of my jobs. And in the B2B world, that kind of came out as me trying desperately to mend the relationship between marketing and sales. I will say now I failed. It didn't work. From what I can gather, from what I can see from the outside, it looks like it's better now. And I definitely got some things in motion while I was there, but I never got to see it through. And that sucks.
What went wrong then in terms of approach? Anything you tackled differently?
There was definitely a clash of personalities. I don't necessarily want to get too deep into this, but like, I am quite headstrong. I have a lot of opinions, and I have a general disdain for assumed authority. So when there are a group of men who all look identical, it's a bit of a boys' club. Sales at that point was a massive boys' club, and it was run by this like rugby lad type. Don't get me wrong, he is an exceptional salesman. I can't deny that. He is very, very good at his job. But it was a bit of a kind of, I'm bigger than you, I'm more important than you, like you're just a silly little woman. He never said that, but that's the vibe that I got, and it really upset me. There was just a chronic, women were not listened to in that company. And in a number of places I've worked, women are talked over, are not listened to, their work is rewritten and overdone, because a lot of women just aren't taken seriously in the workplace. Especially, like, I'm 30 years old now, but at that point I was in my mid-20s and I looked even younger, and that massively worked against me. People just did not want to take me seriously. So that was a huge problem. There was also, I'll be honest here, I did lack some people skills. I probably still do. The autism kind of makes the social stuff difficult, and this constant sense of, this overwhelming sense of justice that I have, where I see something being done incorrectly and I don't care who is doing it. It doesn't occur to me at that moment that who is doing it or who is saying it is important. I will be the person, if someone says, has anyone got any questions or feedback, I'll be the person to raise my hand and be like, that's not the logical way of doing things. Have you tried doing this instead? And it turns out you're not supposed to do that in front of other people.
But then don't we all suffer professionally if actually you don't put your hand up and go, actually, because maybe we haven't thought of doing that, and you make perfectly sensible. I think as much as instinctively you want to go, well, actually, have you worked a little bit on delivering those messages? I think there's also a bit of everyone else also checking themselves and going, actually, are we always listening?
Yeah, I mean, like, I have been tone policed my entire career, always. I think some of it because I'm young, some of it because I'm female, some of it because I'm autistic, and some of it because my delivery can be really fucking poor. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say all of these systemic issues are against me. Like, they are. But I've also got to hold my hands up and be like, hey, I was not the most mature in that situation. I spoke out of emotion. I did not speak out of logic. And I think that's been a really hard lesson to learn over the years. It's something that I love about working from home and working for myself, where if I get a bit of feedback from a client, or I have like a really overbearing client who's very demanding on me and doesn't trust me to do my job and starts micromanaging, it happens occasionally, I have the space to sit back and be like, I'm going to deal with that tomorrow once I've slept on it and I've distanced myself, and I don't have someone breathing down my neck going, why has this not been done yet? Because I don't have a boss. It's just me.
Yeah, you could take a moment if you need to
I have the freedom to process things in the time I need to process them, which is something that I never had working in-house, and I think has been the biggest change in my people management and client management skill set, and like learning how to challenge people in a way that is helpful and not in a way that's going to be perceived as me trying to undermine someone.
So there are definitely skills that can be learned then, because I think often it can be a little bit of a misconception that, well, if I'm a complete straight shooter, then that's just me, and there's not a lot I can really do about about that. Everyone else has just got to suck it up. But it seems like you're finding that balance now between no bullshit, no jargon, but maybe a little bit of sugar with the pill.
Yeah, I am definitely learning in the time that I've been freelancing, like working directly with business owners. People have a much bigger vested interest in what's happening and the work that I'm providing. Sometimes that means they come with really heightened emotions. Sometimes it means they're really micromanaging. And sometimes they're like, you know what? I trust you to do this, and I'm investing a lot of money for you to do this properly. Just get on with it. Let me know if you need anything. And a huge part of this for me has been learning how to adapt my communication style to different people. My default setting is blunt. Like, there's no sugarcoating. I say it as it is. And I would say a good 60-70% of the people I work with love that. And it's a big part of the reason why they work with me. Like, they see my posts on LinkedIn, they read my LinkedIn profile, my website. My new website I'm steering hard into that side of my personality. Because I want to work with people who can take direct and blunt feedback. But yeah, like, I've been working really hard to figure out how to adapt to different communication styles and what different people need from me. Because you could say the same thing to 5 people and they will hear 5 different things. And it took me an embarrassingly long time to learn that. A lot of people don't say what they mean. And because of that, they interpret honesty as something like subtext that isn't there. So yeah, learning how to do that has been a huge learning curve. That's been probably the biggest learning curve I've made since I went freelance.
But I think there's an important lesson there about being unapologetically you, and it's something that I think for me personally it's definitely come with age. That I'm less inclined to start editing out bits of my personality. Now, people who know me very well will know I can have a hideously dark sense of humor where I probably get cancelled. I probably will get cancelled at some point down the line, yes. But I might not bring all of that to the workplace, but I'll certainly I've certainly become less inclined to completely airbrush parts of my personality. Go, well, I am me. I have the belief that I'm good at what I do, but I'm not going to put this whole coat of varnish over me and pretend to be something and someone I'm just fundamentally not.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, like, I know we've briefly touched on the kind of the neurodivergent side of things, but if you take that to an extreme, and that is what autistic masking is like, it's like having to rehearse every interaction that you have with someone, having to monitor your facial expressions. Am I making the right amount of eye contact? Oh no, while I was thinking about eye contact, I stopped listening to what that person was saying. My foot's tapping on the floor because I'm nervous. I need to stop that because it's irritating people. It's just this constant internal monologue of monitoring everything that you say and you do. And I have never been hugely adept at masking. I can to an extent, but as soon as I'm focused on something, I look like the most miserable motherfucker you ever saw in your life. Right? When I'm focused, I look angry. I've been told my concentration face is aggressive. I have no control over that. It's just what happens when I'm concentrating. But there's also things like, if I'm stressed, as I often was in the workplace, because I was also overstimulated by social interactions, overhead lighting, music, background talking, all of that, then my ability to mask my behavior and present the most acceptable version of myself was really hindered. and it became that much harder, which made me more prone to burning out. Working in an office is like a genuine psychological hellscape for me, and is not something I will ever do again.
No, it's often viewed as, well, that's particularly pre-pandemic, definitely. It was, the office was your only real sort of place to go to work and build experience, and go and work for a firm and move on and up in your career. So if there are sort of quite large groups of people where hellscape is quite a good word that I will take with me now, then aren't we as businesses just missing out on huge swathes of talent here?
Yeah, and there's also, like, I think that businesses have disability is a protected characteristic, right? If you want to talk about the recruitment side of things, disability is a protected characteristic, and a lot of people are not willing to disclose autism, ADHD, various things like that in the workplace, because they are, for the most part, invisible disabilities, and you can get heavily penalized for needing accommodations, even though legally businesses can't do that. I think I mentioned when we spoke before about the pretty shocking statistics of how many, or rather how few, autistic people are employed full time. And as far as I'm aware, that current statistic is 15%, 15.
Yeah, I think last time there was a thud as my jaw dropped to the floor, because I was genuinely, well, my initial reaction was that I was surprised, but then as I started to rewind the tape of sort of my career, going, actually, I can't recall many, if any, instances where I've worked with anyone or interviewed anyone who you would sort of typify as neurodivergent. I just drew a blank.
Yeah, so here's a really interesting thing, right? And a really common thing particularly with high masking autistic women, a very, very common story that I share. I am really fucking good at job interviews. I'm amazing at job interviews because I can read the room, adjust my personality, I can emote in the right ways, give the right answers, make people laugh, figure out their sense of humor. Like, there is a certain level of hypervigilance that comes with being autistic, that if you are able to highly mask, which is a privilege in itself, to be honest, if you are able to do that, you can walk into a room having done your research and instantly know how you are supposed to act, what you're supposed to say, and how you're supposed to perform in order to get people to like you, because you've spent your entire life performing in order to get people to like you. And then 1 month, 2 months, 6 months down the line, when you've got the job and your boss or the person who hires you realizes that you are not the person that they interviewed, things start to come apart and things go wrong.
So how do we start better supporting colleagues in that situation? Because it just feels really, really a real shame to let talent exit our businesses and not harness that. We talk a lot about diversity, right? And actually, often it's a bit of an exercise in have we got all the Pantone colours on the chart, whereas actually diversity of thought is also really important. But how do we stop that sort of exiting the business and just becoming and people getting burnt out?
So a huge amount of it comes down to managerial structure and having empathetic management. Middle management are some of the most important people in a company, and they are also some of the most overstressed and overworked people because they are taking shit from the bottom and shit from the top. However, if you can have people in your company who are empathetic, kind, caring, considerate, and are able to make space for their employees, it makes the world of difference. So you need to make sure that you have a company structure in place where every employee has optional access to things like a weekly one-to-one. Occasionally catching up with your employees in like a team monthly meeting isn't enough, because that shows that your team members are numbers on a sheet. They are not individual people, and there needs to be a level of investment in individual people and just naturally accommodating people's needs without needing to have formal disclosure, without needing to have a formal diagnosis. Because there's also a case of women are severely underdiagnosed. And a lot of women in the workplace might not know, much like myself. They might have no fucking idea that they are autistic, that they have ADHD, that they have these issues that are equal parts making them amazing at their jobs and terrible at their jobs for completely different reasons. Because neurodivergent people are not able to tick the neurotypical boxes and the neurotypical workday structure, social hierarchy, social events. It's things like socializing is not compulsory. Removing the idea of meritocracy, which is based on who you know, who you spend time with. It's supposed to be based on the value of your work, but it's not. Meritocracy is a myth, which is a whole other conversation that we can have another time. But there's so much in the way of workplace progression that is based on, have you been out for drinks with this person? Have you spent enough time with that person? You're more likely to get a promotion if you spend time socially with the people who are making those decisions. And that's incredibly unfair to people who struggle in a social perspective. There's little things you can do from the start of the recruitment process. So if you are recruiting, you can provide the option. Do you want to have an in-person interview? Do you want to do it remotely? And let the candidates choose. When someone comes onto a call, do you want cameras on, cameras off? It's little things like that from the word go shows that a level of consideration has been made to different people's levels of needs.
Do you know what? You've already got me thinking about, certain things that I've just definitely taken for granted, when I've been a bit like, why so and so not got my camera on? Oh, that's a bit strange.
But I think like having that conversation is really important. So at the start of a call, either when you're doing the final emails that go out, like book a time for your call or whatever, either have a checkbox that says cameras on, cameras off, or at the start of the call, sit there and be like, hey, like I'm glad that we've seen you and you've seen me. Do you want to have cameras on or cameras off? Because by asking that question, like person to person, I think it just creates a very clear show of solidarity.
Yeah, it's okay for you to do this.
Yeah.
We'll have a good conversation either way. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also, it's amazing how many things in the recruit. I've worked a lot in the HR space as well, so I have a lot of thoughts crossing over these two areas. It's incredible as well, like how often people will cite things like, if you have two interview candidates who both seem on paper equally qualified for the job, and it's gone really well, it's very, very close. Little things such as this person didn't make much eye contact, or this person wasn't paying attention because they were looking around the room. Eye contact is really difficult for autistic people and for people with ADHD. And there's also I could literally talk about this for hours. There are so many things, like being forced to sit in a chair in a certain way for an hour for an interview can be really difficult for people who are hypermobile, suffer from chronic pain, people with ADHD. Like that, there is so much that recruitment and HR processes do not acknowledge about the disabled experience. And because of that, not only are they unknowingly discriminating against disabled people and shutting them out, they're also, from like a slightly more cutthroat business perspective, losing out on really incredible people who could bring a lot of success to their business and diverse perspectives to their business practices by not accommodating that.
Yeah, actually, taking your ability to take a business, cut through all the all the BS and come out with content that cleanly and clearly articulates that. That's money.
Yeah.
That's money to a business right there. And for what I'll typize as a few superficial things. Oh, she didn't have a camera on when she was talking to me. It's we're closing the door there. So yes, in terms of your own journey, what was it what was the prompt that got you actually, do you know what, corporate life, I'm done with this, I'm going to do my own thing? Was there a particular point, or death by 1,000 cuts?
It was death by 1,000 cuts. Death by a million fucking cuts, man. It was a lot. It kind of, honestly, the beginning of the end was the pandemic, right? Which I know is a case for a lot of people. I went from, I was very lucky that I was already working hybrid, right? So by that point, my degree had finished. It was full time. So I was 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. The pandemic happens. I'm then working 5 days a week from home and realizing how much it was taking a toll on me to be working in an office and commuting. My commute was an hour and a half each way. So doing all of that commuting and stuff, it was really taking its toll on me. So I was let go from that job. And that was a job where I started as one of 3 marketing people. It was then just me. And then someone else was brought in against my recommendation. And he then recommended that I was cut from the marketing team because it was an unnecessary expense. It was a whole thing. And then, to be fair to him, he then went on to create and lead a very successful marketing team, and things were getting much better after I left. But that was largely a structural issue. Anyway, don't want to get into that. So I was let go from that job after slaving away, working all kinds of crazy hours because I had been left on my own to market this massive company that was growing and growing and growing. Every other team was expanding, and I felt completely abandoned. And then I was put on furlough because I was completely burnt out, and then I was let go. And I nearly went freelance then because I kind of had this realization after many years of pouring everything I had into the jobs that I was working at, that no one cares. No one gives a shit about me as a person, about my life outside of work. And I'm not saying this is true of every job you work at. I think I had quite an unfortunate run. Now, 3 months later, after an entire summer of interviewing for jobs, debating whether I should go freelance, I then landed a job at another company. It was a significant step down, both in terms of pay and responsibility. But that job gave me hope. And that job gave me hope because that was where I worked for a wonderful, delightful, beautiful human being called Jared, who is the only good manager I've ever had. And he was amazing. But I left that job a year later because I was bored and I was understimulated. And then I went back into I'm the only marketing person in this company kind of job. And I lasted there for 3 months before I left because it was a total fucking nightmare.
So let's talk about Jared for a moment.
Yeah. Love Jared.
Because a lot of what I see a lot of people struggling with is this whole concept, what is being a good manager and managing people all about. It sounds like you've had an absolutely fantastic experience here. So what did he do right?
I don't want to minimize it, but he treated me like a person. That was a really huge part of it. He was so welcoming and understanding, and he felt safe, and he always made me feel safe. And after years and years and years of being treated awfully at many different workplaces, I'm literally getting emotional talking about this. I can't explain to you how good of a person Jared is. So I knew very early on that Jared was like a safe space of a person, because obviously I'm not going to go into details, but I had quite a significant thing happen in my personal life that kind of meant I had to overhaul a lot of things. And like, I had been working there for 3 weeks and I was like, I'm sorry for no notice, but I can't work next week. I need the week off. And his response was, okay, approve the holiday. And then when I got back, he was like, are you okay? Are you safe? And I was like, damn, this is a person who really cares about me and doesn't just care about my work output. He was like, I know you've only just started working here, but I care about you. Are you okay? What can I do? And it blew my mind. I have never,
that doesn't take much to do. That doesn't take much to do, does it?
And I had never had that in a work environment before, ever. So yeah, that was wonderful. And then he just continued to be wonderful. And I discovered the autism and the ADHD and all that fun stuff while he was my boss. And I had always been kind of ostracized for the way that I communicated and the way that I explained myself, the way that I processed information. But I felt at that point that I could just tell him, and I did. And I was scared to tell him because I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get fired, because that's literally the experience that I'd had up until that point. And I told him. He was like, oh, okay, what do you need from me? And like, this is the big thing about Jared, right? All of our interactions as boss and employee, it was never about him. He never made it about himself. He never made it about the company. Everything was holding space for me and what I needed. And it's incredible what that can do to a person's safety and comfort.
I've hired you because you're capable. Now I'm just going to clear the way for you to do what you need to do.
Yeah, it's recognizing that you are a person beyond your function at the company. And so often, because people, like middle management in particular, they're facing so much pressure from the people above them, right? And I think that pressure can often come out as frustration aimed at their employees for not being perfect, or for having a crisis which takes away from all the other things that I need to deal with. And Jared was and continues to be just such a completely unselfish person. I'm still friends with him, like we still talk and stuff. So like, that's not just who he is in work, that's just who he is as a person.
I don't care what anyone says. There is not this work and personal self. Some people try to put this huge big dividing line in between, and you step in one and out of the other.
People who say bullshit like leave your home life at the door, absolutely not. You are a person first, you are an employee second, always. And too many people forget that.
So be more Jared, basically.
Be more Jared.
So you're about a year and a half into the wonderful world of freelancing. What's next? What's the big idea? Is there a plan, or are you just seeing where it takes you?
I'm seeing where it takes me, but I'm actually in kind of a really exciting place at the moment, because the first year of freelancing was just like, how the fuck do I freelance? How does this work? What do I do? And now I actually feel like I'm an established business owner. I just had a photo shoot done. I've got a new website going live next month. I'm about to launch a new program which helps to teach people copywriting skills and marketing skills that they can then move forward and, you know, use in the rest of their business. It's a 4-week program, named much like a lot of my other stuff. It's called Write Your Own Fucking Content. Waitlist is open now. Cheeky plug for my services. But yeah, so that's going to be quite a big thing, I think. I honestly wasn't really expecting anyone to pay attention to it, but I've got 3 people beta testing the program next month, and I've got 12 people on the wait list for it already. So I actually think that's going to be next. I think that's going to be a huge turning point in my business, is doing a lot more one-to-one working with people. I'm also finding that I'm doing a lot more SEO work. I love a website project. Websites will always be my first love, but at the moment I think that's just out of most people's budget range, is investing in a website, because to do a website justice, you've got to invest at least $5,000 into that project, and a lot of people don't have that right now. So I'm doing a lot of things like taking people's current websites, fixing their SEO, which is a whole thing in of itself because there's a lot of issues in there. But yeah, I think for me, the future of freelancing is very much focused on consultation, training, working one-to-one with people, which is the sort of thing I love doing. You know, for the longest time, I kind of always had this catchphrase of like, oh, I hate people. I don't. I hate groups of people. I love working one-on-one with people. I'm also speaking at Brighton SEO again in September, which will be really, really fun. I loved it last year, so I'm really glad they're bringing me on again this year. And I look forward to that. I've actually made like a group of friends that go to Brighton SEO every year, which is completely unexpected and absolutely wonderful.
Lots in the pipeline, and you're
Yes.
firmly in the driving seat as well, which is
so nice, so needed.
So as a sort of last thing before we wrap ourselves up, I guess biggest cock up and greatest triumph.
I've really thought about this in terms of my biggest cock up. I think my biggest mistake in my marketing career was leaving Jared and leaving that job. But that said, had I not left that job and spent 3 months working in an absolute hellhole, I don't think I would be freelance now. So it's the biggest mistake that I've made, but I can't regret it, because without it I wouldn't be freelancing, and I love freelancing. Greatest triumph, I'm just going to straight out say, was speaking at Brighton SEO last year. It was the first conference I'd ever spoken at. It was like a packed out room. 10 minutes before it even started, there was barely standing room in there. There was about 750, 800 people. Over 3,000 people have watched it online. It was absolutely phenomenal.
Wow, that's a big opening night.
It was, yeah, I was pretty happy with that, not gonna lie to you. The talk was called What the Clusterfuck, and it was all about writing topic clusters when you've got a very small marketing team. And the audience was kind of half people who read the description and were like, yes, I'm a 1-person marketing team, I'm drowning, this sounds like good advice, and half people who saw the title and thought this is going to be funny. And apparently I lived up to the hype, which is good. The response I got from it was incredible. I met so many wonderful people. I got some really good business out of it. It was that's been the highlight of my entire marketing career so far by quite a long stretch.
If anyone wants to go and watch that, I can just type in What the Clusterfuck on YouTube and you'll pop up, yeah?
Actually, yeah, it is actually on YouTube. The 10 most popular talks from each conference get uploaded onto their YouTube channel, and mine snuck in there at number 10. So
well, there you go, you've made it
on the Brighton SEO channel.
Well, we'll send you some more. We'll send you some more viewers momentarily once this goes out.
Yeah, absolutely. Along with the talk as well, if you watch it until the end, there's a QR code you can scan with a bunch of resources you can download, because I tried to fit too much into 20 minutes. And I was like, this isn't going to work. I'm going to make a bunch of checklists for people.
Excellent. Well, thanks ever so much for coming on. It's been absolute pleasure, and
Thank you
hopefully
for
we'll have
having
you
me.
again soon.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much.